So I didn't get to see all of last night's debate. I saw a little bit of it. Like I was watching it online, and then I have an acting class on Tuesday, so I had to drive to class. And while I was driving to class, you know what? It turns out you can get the presidential debate on radio, at least where I live in Los Angeles, you could. But it was by this like random AM station where the signal was like, I felt like I was like living in the 80s or something. Like it was like I had this AM signal going and it was the debate. So I listened to some of it in the car. And then when I parked my car, I tweeted all my thoughts because I try to live tweet every debate. I didn't live tweet as much as I typically do because I wasn't present for all of it. But as I was watching that debate, there were so many questions to Mike Bloomberg that were just setups on the tee, where it was just the one that comes to my mind first is they asked him, they were like, hey, you outlawed, big sugary drinks and stuff like that, like large sizes in New York City. Do you want to do that in every city? And he said, I kind of think that what's good for New York isn't necessarily good for every city in the country. Otherwise, every town would have a naked cowboy. And it just sounded so scripted. By the way, didn't get a laugh. You'd think with all the billions Mike Bloomberg has, he'd hire a joke writer. If he wants to make a joke, you think he could hire a joke writer. But that joke got 0 laughs. But he got a lot of applause from the audience anyway. He really did. And the other thing that they asked him how his policies helped life expectancy in New York. They were like, oh, did you help life expectancy in New York? And he had all these statistics ready that he threw at them. Now, look, do I have any evidence that Mike Bloomberg had the questions in advance? Of course I don't. But man, when you listen to him, it was like, this sounds like every question set up on the tee for him. Every answer sounds so incredibly scripted. Oh, and by the way, the audience really cheering a lot for Mike Bloomberg and Joe Biden, booing Bernie quite often. Gee, why was that? It was kind of weird. Is that really the pulse of South Carolina completely? Well, sounds like not necessarily, because here's what you had to do to get into that debate. Check this out. Want a guaranteed seat at the Democratic debate in Charleston? This is in reference to last night's debate. It'll cost a lot of cash. How much cash? You had to be a sponsor, quote unquote, to get into this debate last night. And what does the sponsorship range from? $1,750 to $3,200. So the people sitting at that debate paid $1,700 to $3,200 to be there. That's first of all, who would pay that? I mean, people where money's just not a factor, obviously, because who would? I wouldn't even pay that much to see my favorite band. Like I can't think of a band touring today that I would pay that much to go see. And man, live music's one of my favorite things in the world. I love live music to death. Going to concerts, one of my favorite things in the world. And, it's what I spend a lot of my leisure dollars on because it's something I really love to do. But man, $1,700. One of my favorite, hey, The Cure's coming. Oh yeah, should we get tickets? It's $1,700. Yeah, that's ridiculous. But do they throw out gold after every song? How do they, do they play? Does each member of the audience get a personal request to Robert Smith directly and he sings it to them? Is that what happens? $1,700 to go to a Cure show? So obviously, if someone who's spending that kind of money, my point, money is completely not an issue for them. Like $1,700 to them is just nothing. Because who would spend that? And to most people, that's a significant amount of money. Man, $1,700 to sit through that circus. By the way, worst moderating job so far this year. The moderating job at last night's debate was absolutely horrific. I have been in high school debate tournaments when I was in high school. I was participating in them. That'd be weird if I just went to them. I'd like to go to high school debate tournaments. I'd like to hear what the youth is saying about issues. But I have been to debate tournaments in high school as a participant that were ran better and moderated better than that circus last night. I mean, at one point, Pete Buttigieg just spoke over Bernie Sanders for like 30 seconds. They did nothing. They did absolutely nothing. Oh, and by the way, at one point, Joe Biden just completely cut off Klobuchar. And then when she tried to finish her thought, cut her off again, put his finger up at her, and started just speaking out at her. And man, if Bernie Sanders would have done that to Amy Klobuchar, the Mick resistance would have been screaming sexist at the top of their lungs. I mean, come on, at the top of their lungs, they'd be screaming. If that was Bernie Sanders that did that. Anyway, hey, man, I don't like Amy Klobuchar. I'm not an Amy Klobuchar fan at all, but it was absolutely ridiculous. He just completely cut her off mid-thought and just started, dumping all over her, Joe Biden did. I mean, it was rude, and the fact that the moderators didn't shut it down proved they weren't doing their job, where they were like, excuse me, let her speak. It is her time. You can respond after. They didn't even do that. And then when Liz Warren went after Bloomberg, and she was right, the things Liz Warren were saying in this case were right about Mike Bloomberg. And again, Liz Warren is not somebody I agree with often. I'm not a fan of hers. I certainly don't want to see her become the nominee because she'd get crushed. But she was bringing up something about Mike Bloomberg, and people just started booing her. And I was also disappointed no one else on stage came to her defense when it came to that and agreed with her. But it was the most horrific moderating job, and the audience seemed so incredibly stacked. And then you found out why. Oh, people paid $1,700 to over $3,000 to be sitting in that debate. Of course, these are Bloomberg's people. Of course, these are Biden's people. There's not going to be many Bernie Sanders fans. So, man, it's like they're doing everything they can to just make it seem completely and utterly fixed. And here's something interesting. I want to share this because somebody said, maybe this is something that Bernie Sanders should start doing. Check this out. Let me put my headset back on here because we got another video. This is from 2016. And this is Donald Trump, of all people. Donald Trump. Check out this video. So in this video, Donald Trump is getting booed. All right, Donald Trump. Let me bring it back to the beginning. And this person, Miles Dyer, who I'm not familiar with this person, but they said, Twitter, does Bernie Sanders need to do this if the booing doesn't stop? All right, so check this out. This is from 2016.
From an elderly woman. Let me talk quiet. A lot of times, that's all of his donors and special interests out there. So that's what it is. And by the way, let me just tell you.
He just called it out. Donald Trump just called it out. He was just like, those are all his donors and special interests. He just called it out. And I'm not saying that Bernie Sanders needs to shush people like Donald. That's not Bernie's style. He doesn't need to behave like a bully like Donald Trump does. That's not what I'm suggesting. But man, in that particular, for instance, Donald Trump just called it for what it was. He's like, those are his donors. Those are his special interests. And Jeb Bush. And afterwards, Bernie Sanders did say, he brought up, he's like, hey, I found out how much people paid per seat to be here. And that's something that he should not be afraid to throw that out there on stage. Maybe he didn't know during the debate. I don't know. Maybe during the debate, Bernie Sanders wasn't aware of that information. I wasn't while the debate was going on. I mean, as I was watching it, I was like, wow, this audience is so ridiculously stacked. It's unbelievable. Where did they get this audience? Where did Bloomberg get these questions? And then you found out later, oh, that's what they did. $1,700 to $3,000 to be there. Okay. So maybe Bernie Sanders didn't know that until after he stepped off stage. I don't know. But, that is something he should do, where he should talk to we the people watching this at home, watching Mike Bloomberg say these horrific things, watch Joe Biden say these horrific things. And by the way, it looks like Mike Bloomberg and Joe Biden are faring a little bit better in South Carolina. And to you blue no matter who folks out there, South Carolina, is that a state that a Democrat has a chance in the general? Is that really a state that's going to go blue in the general? I doubt it. I doubt it. So if your boy's Joe Biden and he ain't doing good in any swing states and he ain't doing good, Iowa, he didn't do good there. He didn't do good in the Northeast. But South Carolina, they like him. Is that your guy? Blue, no matter who, that's your guy? The guy that can win in the states where he's for sure going to lose them in the general. What kind of strategy is that, Blue, no matter who, people? What kind of strategy? My reason for bringing this up, if Blue, no matter who is your logic, you should totally be supporting Bernie Sanders. If Blue, no matter who is your logic, you should be supporting the guy that polls best against Trump and can take some of the states away from Trump that'll win the election. And that's Bernie Sanders. But anyway, so that's why last night's debate was beyond a circus. I can't say, and I said earlier, just a few weeks back after that one CNN debate, that debate was the worst display of news and information I've ever seen in my lifetime. And it was. It was. And I do not like to speak in superlatives that often, but it was. That's just the truth. And I want to say that this one overall as a debate was not worse than that other one. The audience was the most ridiculous, and we know why. And I mean, I would not be shocked if Bloomberg had those questions in advance. I mean, when you really and go back and listen to it. Look, I'm not trying to start a conspiracy theory because I don't have any evidence. And I'm not trying to just throw, I have no evidence that that's the case. I'm just saying he sounded so incredibly scripted. And those questions were all just softballs, just lobbed up for him to knock out of the park. That it's like, gee, something smells foul here. I'm sorry. So, but I don't know if I'd say it was overall where, that CNN debate was just so repulsive and the questions were just and it was just an entire moderating team and every other candidate just crapping on Bernie. And it was so just poorly managed. And the questions were just, and they didn't know how to alter to any responses. Like, hey, Bernie, how are you going to pay for Medicare for all? Bernie answers how he's going to pay for it. Joe Biden, isn't it unfair? Bernie doesn't say how he's going to pay for Medicare for all. Hey, Bernie, did you say this to Liz Warren? No, I did not. Hey, Liz Warren, how did it feel when Bernie said that to you? It's like they were robots and didn't know how to alter their questions. Like they were just robots. So I don't know. I want to say the CNN one was still the worst. We are comparing residue from the bottom of the barrel. That is an insult to even the idea of news and information. It is just embarrassing. And, if we had any type of journalistic accountability in this country, at least at the corporate level, every single person affiliated with that debate would have been fired on the spot. The moderators, the camera person, stuff like that, that's not their fault. They have nothing to do with that. They shouldn't be fired. But the people moderating, the people behind the questions, stuff, every single one of them should have just been fired on the spot. Should have been, this is a circus. I'm sorry. There has to be consequences. You are all fired. But anyway, so I don't know. And I didn't, again, last night, I didn't get to see every single nook and cranny. So, I guess I can't really say one way or the other. I heard enough of it that I don't need to go back through. I heard most of it. I probably missed about, when all said and done, between what I saw as I was getting ready for class and I had it on and I was watching it as I was getting ready, and then what I listened to in the radio on my way to class, I probably missed about 10, 15 minutes total. I don't need to come through it again. But yeah, I don't know. I think overall, I still think the CNN one is slightly worse. Slightly. They're neck and neck. We might get one that's even worse yet. Nothing would surprise me at this point. But anyway, so that was why the South Carolina debate was so freaking ridiculous.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Placone. We'll go through it together and make it alright.